Hey everyone, how's it going? It's Chris again on the virtual voice. I'm here with my friend once again, Fernanda. How you doing, Fernanda?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. Thank you. And you?
I'm doing well, thanks. So today we're talking about something that is extremely important if you're building your team, right? Today we're talking about hiring and firing. So we've grown a lot over the last 3 years. We've brought on a lot of people, and unfortunately, we had to let some people go too. And that happens in any company. So don't if you're starting a company, you're not going to be exempt from this. It's going to be something that you'll have to go through if you're scaling your company. So today we want to talk about a few things that we've learned along the way. First for hiring, and then we'll talk about what you want to do when take into consideration when you fire somebody. So first of all, before you just go out and hire somebody, there's things that you want to take into consideration first. First of all, you want to create. We talked about this in our disc profile video. If you when you start a company, what you want to do is create your org chart. Org chart's got positions. Each position should have a position description. Position description has like everything that all the roles and responsibilities for that position. It's got their KPIs that you're going to measure in a disc profile. You take that, you create a job announcement. And then that's when you go out and announce, like, hey, I'm hiring and this is what I'm looking for. And that's how you're going to measure the person for the position. So anyway, I'm kind of jumping ahead here. So Fernando, what's the first thing that we need to think about when we're starting to hire somebody?
No worries at all, Chris. And you are completely right. So the first thing that we have is write a great job description that clearly explains the position. And yeah, as you mentioned, it's just like explain what skills are necessary for that position and for that job. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
It
that's
doesn't
really
have to go so in depth. I mean, I think sometimes maybe ours can be a little long, but I want people to know, like, hey, this is our expectations, and here's the role. These are the things that you'll be doing. And it also includes who you're going to be reporting to, the hours you're going to be working, the days you're going to be working, the shift you're working, whatever it might be. Anything that they might ask needs to be on that job description. And so once they see the job description or the announcement, and they're like, "Oh, hey, I like this job," how how should that job or application look like? Because we used a really nice application, and you were really instrumental in creating that.
yeah, it was really good. And I think it helped a lot because it was like the first filter after before the interview.
Yep. Hmm.
So yeah, in that form that we had, it was the availability. Just let us know what hours are you available. Sometimes morning, afternoon, just like whatever.
Hmm.
Why do? And I think that's pretty important because um in Chris, you can see it also.
Yeah.
Like we got some applications and just like we got into the why you part, and it
Yeah.
was just like really plain, or they were
Hmm.
not explaining anything, and there were some that they were really good, like was like, wow, this person has the
Yeah.
skills to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's some people who don't take that question seriously, and they'll talk
Yeah.
about hobbies or something, or I'm a marketing major, but I'm applying for this accounting position. Two different people, right? So, you want to look for someone who's taken that question seriously.
Yeah, and also I think being direct with the answer in that question is like, why
Yeah.
you? And just like maybe 6 7 lines, and
Hmm.
that's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, then we have phone experience if they have any at, I don't know, customer service or
Right.
anything.
Hmm.
And then obviously we have the resume,
Yep.
rural location. So yeah, if they're working from home, if they're going to, I don't know, to a coffee shop to work there.
Right.
Then we have this profile. We
Hmm.
already talked about this in another episode, but
Right.
it's pretty important. And then there we mentioned the importance of having the disc profile if you're going to
Exactly.
hire someone.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. All of those are great things. A couple other things that because we are hiring remote people, we talk about, okay, well, they need to have a certain type of, computer speed, internet speed, and things like
Yeah.
that, because, certain parts of the country, they don't have the strongest internet. And if their internet's not working, then it's going to be an issue with your company. And we've run into that a couple of times on our side too. So there's an internet speed test that you can just Google it, you can find it, and have the applicant do the internet speed test. And I think that's great tool to measure, what to expect from them, right?
Yeah.
And then one thing that I do like on here is, the webcam. Do they have a webcam? Are you comfortable being on camera? Because when we have meetings, it's not turn your camera off and we just talk. It's, we want to see each other face to face. It doesn't mean you have to do your hair, wear makeup or anything like that. I don't care about that. I just want to have a good face to face conversation over Zoom. And that's important for me because that's what our culture is. And we did have somebody who, in the past did not want to turn their camera on. And, it's not surprising that they don't work with us anymore. So that it wasn't part of our culture. But anything else on that? Any other things you want to highlight as far as the application goes?
So yeah, we have just the most important thing, record a video.
Yeah.
And that was great. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know, that was a great tool
Yep.
because I remember we were hiring for this position. So I remember Chris in that time, he had like his agenda was full.
Yep.
So we were like, okay, so we don't have that much time for, I don't know, 100 interviews, or well, not 100, but just like
Yeah.
maybe 10 interviews.
Yeah. We had a lot,
So
didn't we?
yeah, so I started watching the videos.
Mm.
And that's when I realized, like, for example, okay, so the availability is good, the YU is good, resume perfect. And
Mhm.
then you see the video and you see the confidence when they're talking, and you're like, yeah, this person needs to be someone that is going to be talking with vendors, with clients, with everything. So if they
Yep.
don't have the confidence to do it, so
Right.
that's not a good fit. And also for the English, it was just checking how good the English was,
Yep.
because I think that's a pretty important part here. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
yeah, it was just like, hey, record I don't know, a 2-minute video
Mhm.
to talking about your hobbies, what you
Yep.
like to do and everything. And yeah, just let us know.
Yeah.
And we got some really good videos that maybe it was like, well, they don't have kind of the experience,
Mhm.
but they have the confidence and their English is perfect. So
Yeah.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we're going to get to this person. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. There's definitely a few people that we talked to. Like you said, they may not have had the experience, but they communicated well. They had the confidence. They appeared to be somebody who would be operating according to our core values. So they might be a good fit with our culture. So those people, we certainly like, okay, well, that it's worth talking to them. So let's talk to them. So, what Fernanda had mentioned earlier, and that's perfect word is filter, right? If you're a leader of the company, you want to try to get as many filters before it reaches you. And the only way you can create those filters if you give your expectations, what you're looking for. This is ideal for me, right? Fernanda and I work very closely together, so she knows what I'm looking for. So she was able to review all the applications, watch the videos, and then just let me know like, hey, these are the good ones. Check these out. And to be honest, I did look at some of the other ones just because I thought, some of the videos were interesting and a little
Yeah.
comical. But just watch them for entertainment purposes, really. But once we found like, okay, we think this might be a good fit. The video is good. Their English is great. Their resume looks pretty good. Now, what's the next step for Netta?
So yeah, well, that's for our interview process, but
Yeah.
after that, we got this meeting with, for example, just the team and everything. Like, for example, if you're in the maintenance position, just before
Yep.
before having an interview with you, it was okay. So the person that is in charge of the maintenance division, it's going to have the interview first, and then
Right.
Chris.
Yep.
So I think that's part there. I know I'm just
Yeah.
getting something there, but
Yeah.
okay.
So yeah,
No,
go ahead.
go. No, you
Yeah.
go.
So, this kind of goes back to what you said earlier about filters, right? And this was
Exactly.
perfect, where Fernanda would review the interview or review the applications, review the videos, send me the good ones. I'll say, okay, let's interview these. So the next step is for people on our team who I trust, who are in the day to day and know the job better than me. I want them to do the first interview, and their interview is going to be basically let's talk about tactical stuff. Like, tell me your
Exactly.
experience with maintenance. Tell me your experience with using software. Tell me your experience with dealing with a customer. What would happen if your customer comes up and they were very angry? How would you handle that? You know, and what would you do afterwards? So things like that are very good questions. And I think we get into questions later on, but I want to just kind of highlight the filter that you brought up, and I thought that's perfect. Is that these two people would do the interview, and then they
Yeah.
would give their thoughts. We used Asana, right? So we recorded the interview on Zoom. We put the link on Asana, and then each person who interviewed this candidate wrote their thoughts and their comments on Asana, and I reviewed each one, and I'm like, okay. And I would watch unless the two people on our team said, yeah, this candidate is horrible, we don't want them on our teams, I wouldn't watch that video. But I would watch the other ones, and I'll say, hey, team, I'm leaning towards this candidate. Um, Let me know what you think, and then we go from there. And then that's when they create the interview with me, and my
Yeah.
interview is more core value based. It's more culture, and to see who they are. I wanted to get to know them as a person, because I don't need to ask them about the job. That was already done. I just want to know if they're going to be a good fit on our team, culture wise and personality wise. So anyway, I think I'm kind of skipping ahead here, but what's the next thing that we need to um, highlight when it comes to hiring people?
So yeah, the next thing is just set performance expectations.
Hmm.
So yeah, I know you're really good at that, Chris. So you want to talk a little bit
It
about that?
it's kind of the military background of mine, right? So it's like, here's the requirements. It goes back to the job description. If you're not meeting your job description, if you're not doing these tasks, you're wrong. So fix it, right?
Yeah.
Here's the measuring tools, the KPIs that we have. If you're not meeting these numbers, I want to know the reason why. If it's because it's a you problem, then we need to have a conversation. Or if it's a problem where you don't have enough resources, I need to know that, right? So that way we can help you out. And then the other things, just expectations of like, hey, this is your work hours. You're supposed to show up on time. This is when you take your lunch. This is how you communicate to the team. And when we have meetings, you're expected to be there and participate.
Yeah.
So just things like that. Don't leave it open and vague. Um, be detailed about it, because if you're open and vague and you have an expectation, you assume that the other person understands it, and then they're not meeting it, you're going to get frustrated. You're going to get resentful. You're just going to
Yeah.
be angry. Well, you got to look at yourself. It's a leadership problem. It's not a people problem in that particular situation. But yeah, set performance expectations from the get go and be detailed about it. And then next one after set performance expectations is
Evaluate candidates based on your core values. And I think that's pretty important. And I
mhm,
think that's we're going to go after this to the firing reasons and
yeah.
once that. But I think that's pretty important. Just like hiring someone that, as you said, uh, fits your company culture.
Hmm.
It's I think really important. So you
Yeah.
want to talk about it?
Yeah, definitely. So everyone has already heard you hire and fire based on your core values. If you don't
Exactly.
have core values, then you could just hire some random person and like, maybe they'll work out. In my opinion, before you hire anyone, you need to have core values. But in our case, when we started, we just like hired a bunch of people because we're so busy. And then it's like, okay, all together, we're going to come together and say, and agree as a team, this is our core values and this is how we're going to operate. So I think that was a good scenario, but definitely need to have core values in place. And then once you have core values in place, then you ask questions based on those core values, right? And Fernanda wrote down this perfect one here, a question of, tell me about 3 new skills you've taught yourself in the last year. And we haven't asked a question like that in our interviews, and we need to, because that is
Yeah.
in line with our core values of always improving. So our core values are always improving. Tell us what you've done in the last year. What new habit have you developed? What one thing that you're working on yourself to make you a better version of yourself, right? It's things like that, that if someone is saying, oh yeah, I'm reading this book, and it happens to be one of the books I read, like, oh wow, okay, cool. They're reading some pretty cool books, right? So
Yeah.
things like that I think are important. You definitely want to ask the questions to see if they are in line with your core values. Anything else to add to that one?
I think like we do questions like that, and just like,
Mhm.
for example, related to how would you react if a tenant was, I don't know, angry if an owner responded this way,
Mhm.
because that's just like a pleasure in service. Because if you see they react like I would be just angry and just, I don't know,
Yeah.
respond this way, you're going to be like, okay, so that's not really good, really aligned to
Yeah.
pleasure in service. So
Yeah.
we need someone that is just like more calm, more like, uh
Exactly.
so yeah. And I think it would be good, maybe one question per core value just to have there on your interview, or two questions, like for example, like the one that Chris mentioned, just tell me
Mhm.
about three new skills that you've taught yourself that's for always improving. Then you can create more, and that way you're going to be like, "Oh, okay, so they answer these questions in the correct way, well, not in the correct way, but it's aligned to the company culture.
Mhm.
Okay, so they fit on the core values, so what's next?" And I
Mhm.
think that's pretty important, because having just like making sure that they're aligned with your core values,
Mhm.
that's the key part. Because, well,
It is.
experience and everything,
Mhm.
like, you can fix it. If the person had just like, for example, always improving, they want to learn new stuff, they are like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, I'm self-taught on these things and everything, you're going to be like, well, maybe you don't have the required experience for this, but
Mhm.
you're going to learn it in really fast, you know?
Yeah,
So yeah.
exactly. You're absolutely right. If someone is can fit in your culture and agrees to your core values, and I think I would add in there if they have the right disc profile for the position,
Yeah.
you can teach the skills, right? And a perfect example is this: when you joined our team, you never had a job before,
No.
right? So you didn't have work experience,
Yeah.
and but you had the core values, you had the work ethic, you had the disc profile for the position you were in, and you were a perfect fit for our culture. So 2 years have gone by, and look where you are now, right? You've probably touched every aspect of the business and have done some kind of project within every department of the business, right? Because we recognize you're aligned with the core values, work ethic, and definitely a part of the culture. So don't always look at experience. Look at the core values and culture. If they fit that and the disc profile fits the job description, I would put those as a heavier weight than their resume for sure.
Yeah, totally. And thank you about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So what would be the next one after create values based questions? What do we do after that?
So I think it would be important just like to deliver your core value speech
Yeah.
there to the candidates, like, hey, these are our core values, these are the things that are aligned with our company.
Right.
Just yeah, have a conversation with them about
Yep.
why core values are important in your company, because every company has different core values.
Hmm.
So maybe you can say like, for us it's really important the teamwork, just like they really need to be a team player.
Exactly.
So then you should really focus on that value, you know?
Hmm.
So
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So what I typically do is I'll pull up the core values on our screen and do a screen share on Zoom. Well, first, before I do that, I said, hey, have you had a chance to go on our website and see our core values? If they say no, it's a little bit of an issue there. It's like, okay, well, it would have been nice if you prepared for this interview, you know what our website is. But if they say, yeah, I did take a look at it, I'm like, oh, okay, great. Just kind of going over them. Do you see any issues with those or with you operating according to those core values? Because we're very serious about them. And then I'll pull it up on the screen and then I'll just go over each one and just kind of talk about what does it mean to us. And we do have a paragraph that goes to each word or phrase of our core values, which describes, the why behind that core value. Um, I haven't had, I mean, obviously, if someone's interviewing, they're not going to say, oh, yeah, I don't agree with your integrity. I don't have integrity. I don't think anyone should have integrity. Right. So
Yeah.
no one's going to do that in an interview. But it's definitely a good conversation to have because it's part of setting the expectations. The expectations is you're going to operate according to these core values. You're saying you are. Right now, we believe you are. But if it gets to a point where you're not, then we're having a different conversation. And that's leading into our next topic.
So yeah, our next topic is firing. So
Yep.
there are three types of firing at companies. And so the first one that we have is performance based. So yeah, and
Hmm.
I think that's just the most common one,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
they're not working, you fire them.
And
So
that's why you have KPIs, right? If they're not
exactly.
meeting their KPIs and you're talking about them, like for us, ours is color coded. If they're red, then we talk about it. If it's something beyond their control, but they're working on it, cool. I like it. They're problem solving. But if it's like, yeah, it's a problem, I don't know what to do. Well, okay, I'm not here to solve your problems for you. I'll help you, but I hired you to solve these problems. So if they're failing in performance and they're not doing their job and showing up, then obviously that's a no brainer. You got to let them go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And the second one is policy based. So yeah, it's just like it means any conduct that violates the company's
Yeah.
policies. So
Yeah. We had a situation where I had a Zoom call with a team member
oh yeah.
and um, they decided to drink wine during the meeting. And I said, is that wine? And this person says, yes, I need it. Like, I kind of need a drink too, but I wait until like work's done, kids are in
Yeah.
bed, I'm watching TV. Like, I don't do it in the workday, you know? And that didn't sit well with me. It's funny. This is the same person that didn't turn their camera on. And they turn their camera on and they're drinking wine. So how many times have they been drinking wine without the camera on, right? So definitely that was one of the things that, okay, this is not what we do. Sorry, you're not really a fit for who we are. So
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
hold people accountable to your policies.
Yeah, and also for example, if this person is working like at the same time for another company or just things like that, I think that will fall under also policy based. So yeah, the third one that we have, and it's pretty important also, but it's like a little underrated, is values based firings.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had a few of those
yeah,
where obviously, when someone slips up the first time, you don't automatically just let them go, right? People make mistakes. But the important thing is, as a leader, is when and I tell the team, say, hey, look, I'm not above the core values. If you see me operating outside of the core values, you have the freedom to open up and tell me about it. And everyone is not above the core values. So with that said, if someone slips up, you gotta say, hey, look, for example, there's been times where we had a very difficult tenant and we were dealing with this tenant for months and frustration develops, right? So sometimes you're like saying, oh, so and so's doing this again or whatever it might be. Like we never got to a point where they were saying calling them names or anything like that, but it was getting to be a kind of a negative tone of the conversation. I said, hey guys, this is not who we are and this is not what we do. We don't treat people like that. And I went into like, when you start thinking about someone like that, you start vocalizing that. And when you're vocalizing it, then you start treating that person that way. That's not who we are. It's pleasure and service, no matter who they are. Right. So, and that was received well, except by one person who's no longer on our team. But after I put that out, I had one member reach out to me and say, "Hey, look, I apologize. I shouldn't have, gone into that conversation." I said, "Well, yeah, it's okay. We all make mistakes, but I just want to make sure that this is how we operate, and we're treating everybody the same." So that is we're talking about. How do we get into that conversation?
oh yeah, it's just values based firing.
Value-based
That's
firing. Okay,
yeah.
got it. So yeah, and whenever we've let somebody go on the team, and I don't want to, it doesn't. We haven't fired a lot of people. Just we've had that experience. I've always been able to point to a core value that they are not following, whether it be pleasure and service, always improving, integrity, teamwork, things like that. Um, I was able to say, okay, they're not in line with two of our core values. we've talked to them a few times. They're not improving. Their job performance is poor. I think it's a time we make a switch here. So don't wait too long. So there's a reason why the first part of the podcast here was more about hiring people, because you want to be slow when you hire someone. You have to be like, go through all those questions. You have to have those interviews. You have to make sure that these people are the right fit, because you're about to invest time and money into this person to help you run your business. But firing someone is a quicker evolution, because it's like, okay, they're not performing, core values. I think you're not a good fit anymore. And let's, I think it's time to part ways. So anything to add to that? Because I've got a few like tips from like, if you were to have that conversation.
Well, I think that that's it for me. You mentioned all the
Yeah.
things, all the right things, Chris, and I think just and that's why it is important. And I think we're going to have another podcast about that, just like another episode about core values, because
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Just setting straight your core values, like these are the things that are important to us, because based on that you are going to hire and fire. So just like keeping
Exactly.
that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it
Yeah.
was really good. So
Yeah.
go
So
ahead, Chris.
yeah, when you have this conversation, my recommendation is that you keep it short. Don't just kind of talk, and because you're going to be nervous. When you're nervous, you tend to talk more, and you say things that maybe you don't really want to say. But just write down what you want to say.
Yeah.
I've got a form where, like, okay, when I'm letting somebody go, I'll follow this form, and this is what I'll say. I'll explain the why. Whether it be performance based, whether it be, we're terminating this position because it's no longer needed, whatever it might be, give them the why behind it. Sometimes it is performance based, but they should know by the time they get to that meeting that they know they're probably in a bit of a trouble, because they've already had a few conversations with you about performance. I would also, depending on the scenario, I would ask for feedback. See, like, is there a reason why, like, was there something that we didn't provide you, or whatever it might be. It's always good to ask for feedback, but maybe not always, right? Maybe there might be sometimes where it's a little bit hostile, and someone is angry with you. I'm not going to ask them for feedback, because at that point, I don't care. Right? They probably
Yeah.
gave me their feedback without me asking, right? And if you let somebody go and you like them, offer to write a letter of recommendation or be a reference for them for a future job. And if maybe, and we've done this before, we've helped somebody find a job. And so that way there's no break in their pay. They're able to roll into another job. So things like that, I think, are good tips. But as I was talking, there's one thing that I was thinking of. Fernanda and I team up on this. So whenever I have a conversation like this with somebody, we've had this a couple of times where, like, okay, I don't know how they're going to react. I
Oh
don't know
yeah.
if there's any kind of retaliation, right? They have access to our software and other things. So we want to eliminate any of that from happening. So we made it a policy that, Fernanda, if you want to tell us, what do you do when I'm having this meeting with this individual?
Okay, so before the meeting, we go over about all the things that they have access to. Like, okay, so email, softwares, and everything. So normally when Chris is on the meeting, I'm just taking away the access from them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just deleting them, like, I don't know, from softwares, email, and everything. Just making sure that they don't have any access to
Yeah.
the company, because it happens, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to risk your company at that point,
Yeah.
and most because it's virtual. So yeah, I remember just Chris saying like, hey, I'm having the interview, just start taking the permissions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's important. And I've had only one person who came back and said, "Oh, that was not classy," and I said, "Well, I apologize. Don't take it that personal. It's just our HR policy that whenever, this happens, we take away access, and there's no need for it, right? If you're no longer working with us, there's no need to access our software, email, or anything, right?" And then we use WhatsApp to chat amongst the team. So
Yeah.
if it's somebody that we're like it's sad to let them go, but it's time for them to go. We allow them the opportunity to get on the chat and say, hey, everyone, I'm moving on to something else. And, it's nice working with you all. But after that, we remove them from all the chats they're a part of.
Yeah, for example, also in the level 10 meeting that we have Wednesday, it's
Mhm.
just like sometimes if the relation was good and it's like, okay, so this person is moving on and everything, and they just say
Mhm.
bye and that's it. And so, yeah, I think it really depends on the situation and the
Yeah.
scenario of why are you firing this person?
Yeah. There's been times where we really liked the person and we wanted to do well for them. So
Yeah.
we helped them find a job and then we say, hey, at the next meeting, why don't you just go ahead and announce that you're moving on to a new position? And then that way the team knows you're transitioning out. But there's also been times where like, all right, we need to make a decision right now. This person is done. And then, we remove them from the chat and then everyone's like,
Yeah.
hey, what happened to so and so? Like, hey, sorry about the, last minute notice here, but I had to let so and so go. They weren't in line with their core values, blah, blah, blah. But at that point, people on the team kind of already know anyway. But anyway, yeah, like what you're saying, it all depends on the situation.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are some tips that we've learned along the way. I mean, I know there's a lot more to learn. We've only been doing this for 3 years. We don't hire a lot and we don't fire, we fire even less. But we've definitely learned a thing or two along the way. So we wanted to share that with you all. And you can use this whether you're dealing with someone in person, but we're primarily a virtual company, and this is kind of like the audience, right? The virtual voice. So anyway, anything else to add to that, Fernanda?
No,
Excellent. You want to go ahead and wrap it up?
I think that's it. Yeah, sure. So thank you everyone for being with us in this episode. We hope you like it and just stay tuned for the next episode. And yeah, stay virtual. Thank you.